The sleek black helicopter descended onto the private landing pad like a bird of prey, its rotors cutting through the morning air with mechanical precision. Nathan Cross stood frozen behind the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, his coffee mug trembling in his hand as he watched the aircraft settle onto the concrete below. What he saw next would haunt him for the rest of his life. A woman stepped out first, her long dark hair whipping in the wind created by the slowing rotors. Even from 40 floors up, Nathan recognized that graceful movement, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous. His heart stopped beating for what felt like an eternity. Isabella Martinez. The woman he had loved more than life itself. The woman who had vanished from his world 5 years ago without a trace. But it wasn't just Isabella that made his blood run cold. 3 small figures emerged from the helicopter behind her, each one holding her hand or clinging to her clothing. 3 children who couldn't have been more than 4 years old. 3 children who, even from this impossible distance, looked exactly like Nathan had at that age. The coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered against the marble floor, the sound echoing through his vast office like a gunshot. Nathan's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his leather chair, his mind reeling with the implications of what he was seeing. The children had his dark hair, his strong jawline, even the way they walked reminded him of his own childhood photos. "This can't be happening," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible in the silent room. "This absolutely cannot be happening." Nathan Cross was known throughout the business world as a man who never lost his composure. At 32 he had built an empire worth billions, commanded respect from world leaders, and never backed down from any challenge. But right now, watching the woman he had never stopped loving walk away with what appeared to be his children, he felt like a scared little boy. His hands shook as he reached for his phone, speed dialing his assistant. "Cancel all my meetings for today," he barked when she answered. "I don't care if the president himself is waiting downstairs. Cancel everything." "Sir, is everything all right?" Rebecca's concerned voice came through the speaker. "No," Nathan said honestly, his eyes never leaving the helicopter as it prepared for takeoff. "Nothing is all right." He watched helplessly as Isabella secured the children into their seats, her movements efficient and caring in the way that had always melted his heart. She was wearing a simple blue dress that hugged her curves, and she looked even more beautiful than he remembered. Motherhood had given her a glow that made his chest ache with longing. The helicopter lifted off, and Nathan pressed his face against the window like a man possessed. He needed to see more, needed to understand what was happening. As the aircraft rose to his eye level, one of the children, a little girl with pigtails, looked directly at him through the window. For a split second, their eyes met across the impossible distance, and Nathan saw his own green eyes staring back at him. The little girl waved, an innocent gesture that nearly brought Nathan to his knees. He waved back instinctively, tears streaming down his face as the helicopter turned and disappeared into the city skyline. Nathan remained at the window long after they were gone, his mind racing with questions that threatened to drive him insane. Were those children really his? How was that possible? Isabella had left him 5 years ago, claiming she needed space to find herself. She had taken the money his mother offered her and disappeared without giving him a chance to fight for their love. The money. Nathan's blood ran cold as he remembered the conversation he had overheard between his mother and Isabella. He had been in a business meeting that ran late, and when he returned to his penthouse, he had heard voices in the living room. He had started to announce his presence when he heard Isabella's voice, thick with tears. "I can't take this money," she had said. "I love him too much." "Love doesn't pay the bills, dear," his mother's cold voice had replied. "Nathan needs someone from his own world, someone who can help his career, not drag it down. You're a beautiful girl, but you're not suitable for my son's future." Nathan had been about to storm into the room and defend Isabella when he heard her next words. "Fine. I'll take your money. But I never want to see any of you again." The next morning she was gone. Nathan had tried to find her, hired the best private investigators money could buy, but Isabella Martinez had vanished as if she had never existed. Now, 5 years later, she had reappeared with 3 children who looked exactly like him. Nathan's mind raced as he calculated the timeline. Isabella had left 5 years ago. The children appeared to be about 4 years old. The math was simple and devastating. She had been pregnant when she left. She had been carrying his children when his mother paid her to disappear. "Oh God," Nathan whispered, sinking deeper into his chair. "What have I done?" He thought about all the sleepless nights he had spent wondering where Isabella was, if she was safe, if she ever thought about him. He had thrown himself into his work, building his company into a global powerhouse, but nothing had filled the hole she left in his heart. He had dated other women, even gotten engaged once, but no one compared to Isabella's warmth, her laugh, the way she made him feel like he could conquer the world. And now he knew why she had really left. She hadn't been running from him, she had been protecting their children from his mother's cruelty. She had sacrificed her own happiness to keep their babies safe from a woman who would have made their lives miserable. Nathan's phone buzzed with text messages and emails, but he ignored them all. His empire could crumble for all he cared. The only thing that mattered now was finding Isabella and his children. He needed to know the truth. He needed to make things right. But first, he needed to understand how they had ended up on that helicopter and where they were going. Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Johnson Private Investigations, a gruff voice answered. "This is Nathan Cross," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his heart. "I need you to find someone for me. And I need you to find them today." As Nathan began to describe Isabella and the children to the investigator, his mind was already racing ahead to their reunion. He would get answers. He would make amends for the pain his family had caused. And somehow, someway he would win back the love of his life and get to know the children he never knew existed. The game had changed completely, and Nathan Cross was ready to fight the most important battle of his life. 6 hours later, Nathan sat in his study surrounded by old photographs and memories he had tried so hard to forget. The private investigator had been efficient, almost too efficient. Within 4 hours he had a complete file on Isabella Martinez, now living under the name Isabella Santos in Portland, Oregon. She worked as a pediatric nurse at the Children's Hospital, lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, and was raising 3 4-year-old triplets named Emma, Ethan, and Ellie. His children. Nathan stared at their school photos, his hands shaking as he traced their faces. Emma had his green eyes and Isabella's smile. Ethan had his stubborn chin and Isabella's gentle expression. Ellie had his dark hair and Isabella's graceful features. They were perfect and they were his. But looking at their innocent faces only made the guilt worse. Nathan pulled out an old photo of himself and Isabella from their first vacation together in Greece. They looked so happy, so in love, so sure that nothing could tear them apart. Isabella was laughing at something he had said, her head thrown back in pure joy, and Nathan was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. That trip had been the beginning of everything. Nathan had been 27 then, already successful but not yet the billionaire he would become. Isabella was 24, working as a nurse while finishing her graduate degree. They had met at a charity gala where Nathan was giving a speech about his company's philanthropic efforts. Isabella had been volunteering at the registration table, and when Nathan saw her helping an elderly man find his seat, her kindness had captured his attention immediately. "You don't have to look so serious," she had teased him after his speech, when he approached her at the refreshment table. "It's a party, not a board meeting." Nathan had actually laughed for the first time in months. "I'm not very good at parties," he had admitted. "I'm much better at board meetings." "Well, lucky for you, I'm excellent at parties," Isabella had said with a grin. "Maybe I can teach you a thing or two." She had taught him much more than how to have fun at parties. Isabella had taught him how to live, how to find joy in simple things, how to be vulnerable with another person. Before her, Nathan's life had been all about work, success, and living up to his mother's impossible expectations. With Isabella, he discovered parts of himself he never knew existed. They had been together for 2 years. 2 perfect, wonderful years where Nathan learned what it meant to be truly happy. Isabella would surprise him with homemade lunches at the office when he worked too late. He would surprise her with weekend trips to places she had always wanted to visit. They talked about everything, their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. Nathan remembered the night he decided to propose. They had been lying in bed after making love, Isabella's head on his chest, her fingers tracing patterns on his skin. "What are you thinking about?" she had asked softly. "Forever," Nathan had whispered, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I'm thinking about forever with you." Isabella had lifted her head to look at him, her eyes shining with love. "Forever sounds perfect," she had said. But forever had been stolen from them by his mother's cruelty and his own cowardice. Nathan closed his eyes, remembering the morning Isabella left. He had woken up to find her side of the bed cold and empty. Her clothes were gone from the closet, her toiletries missing from the bathroom. The only thing she left behind was a note on his pillow. "I'm sorry, Nathan. I can't do this anymore. Don't try to find me. Please just let me go. Isabella." Nathan had been devastated and confused. They hadn't fought. There had been no signs that she was unhappy. The night before they had talked about taking a vacation to Italy, maybe looking at engagement rings while they were there. How could she just disappear without explanation? It wasn't until months later that Nathan discovered the truth about his mother's interference. By then it was too late. Isabella was gone, and all his attempts to find her had failed. Now he understood why she had been protecting their children from a family that had already shown how cruel they could be. Nathan's mother, Victoria Cross, was a formidable woman who had built her own business empire alongside her late husband. She was brilliant, ruthless, and completely without compassion when it came to protecting what she saw as her family's interests. She had never approved of Isabella, considering her beneath their social status. "She's a pretty distraction," Victoria had said during one particularly brutal dinner. "But she's not wife material, Nathan. You need someone who can help your career, not hurt it." Nathan had defended Isabella fiercely, but his mother was relentless. She pointed out Isabella's modest background, her lack of connections in high society, her common profession as a nurse. Every criticism felt like a dagger to Nathan's heart, not because he believed them, but because he knew how much they would hurt Isabella if she ever heard them. Now he realized that Isabella had heard them. His mother had made sure of that. And worse, she had convinced Isabella that Nathan agreed with those cruel assessments. Nathan picked up his phone and dialed his mother's number. She answered on the first ring, her voice crisp and businesslike even though it was nearly midnight. "Nathan darling, what's wrong? You never call this late." "We need to talk," Nathan said, his voice deadly calm. "About Isabella Martinez." There was a long pause. "I don't know what you mean," Victoria said finally. "Don't lie to me, mother. I know what you did. I know about the money you gave her to leave. I know about the threats you made." Nathan's voice was getting louder, 5 years of suppressed rage finally finding its outlet. "And I know about my children." Another pause, longer this time. "You saw her," Victoria said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I saw her. I saw my children. 3 beautiful children that I've never met because of your selfishness." Nathan was standing now, pacing around his study like a caged animal. "How could you do this to me? How could you take away my family?" "I was protecting your future," Victoria said, her voice still maddeningly calm. "That girl would have ruined everything you worked for. She would have held you back. She made me happy." Nathan shouted. "She was the best thing that ever happened to me and you destroyed it. You destroyed my chance to be a father to my children." "Children you weren't ready for," Victoria snapped, finally showing some emotion. "You were building an empire, Nathan. A legacy. That girl and her babies would have been nothing but distractions." "They weren't distractions. They were my family. They are my family." Nathan's voice broke slightly. "And I missed 4 years of their lives because of you." "You'll thank me someday," Victoria said coldly. "When you marry someone appropriate and have children with better breeding, you'll understand that I did what was best for everyone." "No," Nathan said firmly. "I will never thank you for this. And I will never forgive you." He hung up the phone and threw it across the room where it shattered against the wall. Nathan sank into his chair, emotionally drained but more determined than ever. His mother had stolen 5 years from him and Isabella, 4 years from him and his children. He wouldn't let her steal another day. Nathan looked at the investigator's report again, memorizing every detail about Isabella's new life. She had built a good life for herself and their children. She had a career she loved, a home filled with laughter, friends who cared about her. But she was doing it all alone, raising 3 children without any help, working long hours to make ends meet. The report mentioned that Isabella had never married, never even been in a serious relationship since leaving New York. That detail gave Nathan hope, even as it broke his heart. Maybe, just maybe, she had never stopped loving him either. Nathan spent the rest of the night planning. He would go to Portland. He would find Isabella and his children. He would tell them the truth about what really happened 5 years ago. And somehow he would convince them to give him a chance to be the father and partner he should have been all along. As the sun rose over the New York skyline, Nathan made a decision that would change everything. He was going to fight for his family no matter what it took. His empire could wait. His mother's approval didn't matter. All that mattered was winning back the love of his life and meeting the children he had dreamed of but never dared to hope for. The real battle was about to begin. Nathan's private jet touched down in Portland at sunset, the city skyline painted in shades of orange and pink that reminded him painfully of Isabella's favorite colors. He had spent the entire flight reviewing every piece of information his investigator had gathered, memorizing details about his children's lives that he should have been there to witness firsthand. Emma was the artist of the triplets, always carrying crayons and paper wherever she went. Her preschool teacher noted that she drew the same thing over and over, a family of 5 stick figures, always missing the daddy figure's face. Ethan was the protector, constantly looking out for his sisters and showing remarkable emotional intelligence for a 4-year-old. Ellie was the explorer, curious about everything, asking endless questions that sometimes exhausted Isabella but always made her smile. They attended Little Sprouts preschool 3 days a week while Isabella worked her shifts at Portland Children's Hospital. On her days off, she took them to the park, the library, the zoo, always making sure they had experiences and adventures despite their modest budget. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic that needed repairs, lived in a rental house with a small yard where the triplets played, and somehow managed to make it all feel like magic for her children. Nathan's chest tightened as he read through the investigator's detailed observations. The man had been thorough, even including photos of Isabella and the children at various locations around the city. In every single picture, Isabella looked tired but happy, and the children looked loved and secure. She was an incredible mother, something Nathan had always known she would be. The limousine pulled up to the Hilton Portland downtown, where Nathan had booked the penthouse suite. He could have stayed anywhere, could have bought a house for the duration of his stay, but he wanted something that felt temporary. This wasn't about establishing himself in Portland. This was about convincing his family to come home with him. Once settled in his suite, Nathan opened his laptop and began making plans. He couldn't just show up at Isabella's door, that would be too shocking, too overwhelming for the children. He needed to be strategic, to find the right moment and the right approach. But first, he needed to see them with his own eyes, to process the reality of being a father to 3 amazing children. The next morning, Nathan positioned himself across the street from Little Sprouts preschool, wearing dark sunglasses and a baseball cap to avoid being recognized. He felt ridiculous hiding like some kind of stalker, but he needed to observe before he acted. He needed to understand the rhythm of their lives. At exactly 8:30 a.m., Isabella's Honda Civic pulled into the parking lot. Nathan's breath caught in his throat as she stepped out of the car, looking even more beautiful than she had from his office window. She was wearing scrubs, light blue ones that brought out her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. But it was her smile that nearly brought Nathan to his knees. She was smiling at something one of the children had said, and that smile was exactly the same as it had been 5 years ago. The triplets tumbled out of the car with the endless energy of 4-year-olds, Emma clutching a drawing, Ethan carrying a backpack almost as big as he was, and Ellie spinning in circles just because she could. Isabella moved among them with practiced efficiency, checking backpacks, wiping faces, distributing kisses and hugs. "Be good for Miss Jennifer," Nathan heard her say as they approached the school entrance. "I'll see you after work and we'll make pancakes for dinner." "Can we make them shaped like dinosaurs?" Ethan asked. "Can we make them purple?" Ellie added. "Can I draw on mine with syrup?" Emma chimed in. Isabella laughed, the sound carrying across the street and hitting Nathan like a physical blow. He had forgotten how much he loved her laugh, how it used to light up his entire world. "We'll figure it out together," she said, kissing each child on the forehead before watching them run into the school. She stood there for a moment, watching through the window as they settled into their classroom, and Nathan saw something in her expression that broke his heart. Loneliness. Despite the joy she found in her children, despite the life she had built for them, Isabella looked profoundly lonely. Nathan wanted to run to her, to wrap her in his arms and tell her she never had to be alone again. But he forced himself to stay hidden, to continue observing. This wasn't about what he wanted, it was about what was best for Isabella and their children. After Isabella drove away to the hospital, Nathan spent the morning researching everything he could about her workplace. Portland Children's Hospital had an excellent reputation, and Isabella worked in the pediatric intensive care unit, one of the most demanding and emotionally challenging departments in any hospital. She was helping to save children's lives every day while raising 3 children on her own. Nathan's admiration for her strength grew with every detail he learned. That afternoon, Nathan positioned himself at a coffee shop across from the hospital, hoping to catch a glimpse of Isabella during her break. At 2:30 p.m., she emerged from the building with another nurse, a petite blonde woman who seemed to be a close friend. Nathan ordered his coffee and chose a table by the window, straining to hear their conversation. "You look exhausted," the blonde woman was saying. "When's the last time you had a full night's sleep?" Isabella laughed ruefully. "What sleep? Ellie had nightmares 3 times last night, and Ethan was up early because he was excited about show and tell." "And Emma?" "She's been asking about her daddy again," Isabella said quietly, her voice carrying a note of pain that made Nathan's hands clench into fists. "I don't know what to tell her anymore. She sees other kids with fathers and she wants to know where hers is." What do you tell her? Isabella was quiet for a long moment, stirring sugar into her coffee with unnecessary concentration. I tell her that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and that her daddy doesn't know about her and her brother and sister. But she's getting older and she's starting to ask harder questions. Maybe it's time to contact him, the friend suggested gently. Maybe he deserves to know he has children. Nathan leaned forward, desperate to hear Isabella's response. No, Isabella said firmly. His mother made it very clear that children weren't part of his plans. That I wasn't part of his plans. I won't subject my babies to that kind of rejection. Nathan's heart shattered into a million pieces. Isabella truly believed that he didn't want their children, that he had chosen his mother's approval over their love. The lies his mother had told her had become truth in Isabella's mind, and Nathan knew that overcoming those lies would be the hardest thing he had ever done. But as he watched Isabella finish her coffee and return to work, Nathan also saw something that gave him hope. She still wore the necklace he had given her for their first anniversary, a simple silver chain with a small heart pendant. It was tucked under her scrubs, barely visible, but Nathan recognized it immediately. If she truly hated him, if she had truly moved on, she wouldn't still be wearing his gift. That evening, Nathan returned to the preschool pickup line, this time staying in his rental car to avoid being seen. He watched as Isabella collected the triplets, listened to their excited chatter about their day, helped them into their car seats with the kind of patient love that made Nathan's chest ache. The children were chattering about a classmate's birthday party they had been invited to over the weekend. Nathan heard Emma asking if they could buy a present, heard the slight hesitation in Isabella's voice as she agreed. Money was clearly tight, but Isabella would never let her children feel left out or different because of their financial situation. Nathan made a mental note to find a way to help without Isabella knowing. He had billions of dollars sitting in various accounts, and the woman he loved was struggling to buy birthday presents for their children's friends. The irony was not lost on him, and neither was the urgency of the situation. As he followed their car from a safe distance, Nathan saw them stop at a small grocery store. Through the window, he watched Isabella carefully count out coupons while the triplets pressed their faces to the glass of the freezer section, looking at ice cream they probably couldn't afford. The image burned itself into Nathan's memory, fueling his determination to make things right. That night in his hotel suite, Nathan made a decision. He couldn't keep hiding and watching from afar. Tomorrow he would find a way to approach Isabella directly. He would tell her the truth about what had happened 5 years ago, and he would do everything in his power to convince her to give him a chance to be the father their children deserved. Nathan spent hours that night crafting and recrafting what he would say, but every version sounded inadequate. How do you apologize for 5 years of absence? How do you explain that you didn't know your children existed without sounding like you're making excuses? How do you convince the woman you love that this time things will be different? As dawn broke over Portland, Nathan knew there were no perfect words for what needed to be said. All he had was the truth, his love for Isabella and their children, and a determination to fight for his family no matter what obstacles stood in his way. The time for hiding was over. Tomorrow, Nathan Cross would begin the most important negotiation of his life, not for a billion-dollar deal or a corporate merger, but for a second chance at the happiness he had lost and the family he never knew he had. Nathan's hands were shaking as he stood outside Little Sprouts preschool at pickup time, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual designer suits. He had spent the morning practicing what he would say to Isabella, but every word had flown out of his head the moment he saw her Honda Civic pull into the parking lot. This was it. After 5 years of wondering, searching, and regretting, he was about to come face to face with the woman he had never stopped loving and the children he had never known existed. Isabella stepped out of her car and Nathan's breath caught in his throat. She looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from years of carrying the world on your shoulders, but she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She was wearing her hospital scrubs again, her hair escaping from its ponytail in soft curls that framed her face. Nathan forced himself to walk toward the school entrance, timing his approach so that he would arrive just as Isabella did. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone in the parking lot could hear it. This was scarier than any board meeting, more nerve-wracking than any business deal he had ever negotiated. Isabella was checking her phone when Nathan approached, and she didn't look up until he was standing directly in front of her. When she did raise her eyes and see his face, the phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the ground. "Hello, Isabella," Nathan said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Isabella stared at him like she was seeing a ghost, her face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that might have been pain. For a long moment, neither of them moved or spoke. The sounds of children playing and parents chatting faded into background noise as they stood frozen in their own bubble of tension and unresolved history. "Nathan," Isabella finally whispered, his name falling from her lips like a prayer or a curse. "What are you doing here?" "I saw you," Nathan said, taking a careful step closer. "In New York. You were in a helicopter with 3 children who look exactly like me." Isabella's face went pale, and Nathan saw her hands begin to tremble. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isabella, please," Nathan said desperately. "We need to talk. I know about Emma, Ethan, and Ellie. I know they're my children." Before Isabella could respond, the preschool doors burst open and 3 small hurricanes came racing toward them. Nathan's world tilted on its axis as he got his first close look at his children. They were even more beautiful than their photographs had suggested, and the resemblance to him was unmistakable. "Mommy?" Emma called out, launching herself into Isabella's arms with a drawing clutched in her small fist. "Look what I made. It's our family, but I still don't know what to make Daddy's face look like." Nathan's knees nearly buckled. His daughter was holding a picture of their family with his face left blank because she didn't know what he looked like. The guilt and pain hit him like a physical blow. Ethan and Ellie flanked Isabella, and Nathan found himself being studied by 3 pairs of curious green eyes, his own eyes, reflected in the faces of the children he should have been raising all along. "Mommy, who's that man?" Ellie asked with the directness that only children possessed. "He looks like us." Isabella's grip tightened on the children, her protective instincts clearly warring with her shock at seeing Nathan. This is an old friend of Mommy's," she said carefully. "Kids, why don't you go get your backpacks from Miss Jennifer while I talk to him for a minute? Can we show him my dinosaur book?" Ethan asked hopefully. "He looks like he might like dinosaurs." Nathan's heart clenched. "I love dinosaurs," he managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. Maybe you can show me sometime." The triplets exchanged glances with the kind of silent communication that Nathan had read twins and triplets often shared. Then Emma stepped forward with the fearless confidence of a child who had been raised with love and security. "Are you our daddy?" she asked simply, holding up her drawing. "Because you have the same eyes as us and you're tall like Mommy says our daddy is." The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Nathan looked at Isabella, silently asking for permission to answer, but she was staring at Emma with a mixture of panic and heartbreak. "Emma, honey, we need to go," Isabella said quickly, reaching for her daughter's hand. "Say goodbye to Mommy's friend." But Emma wasn't finished. She looked at Nathan with the serious expression of a child trying to solve a puzzle. "Mommy cries sometimes when she thinks we're sleeping," she said matter-of-factly. "She looks at pictures on her phone and cries. Are you in those pictures?" Nathan felt like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. Isabella was looking at pictures of him and crying? After all these years, she still thought about him? "Emma, that's enough," Isabella said, her voice strained. She looked at Nathan with something close to desperation. "You need to leave. Please. Don't do this here, not in front of them." "Isabella, please," Nathan said urgently. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to explain what really happened. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Isabella snapped, her protective mama bear instincts fully activated. "I understood 5 years ago when your mother made it crystal clear that I wasn't good enough for your family, and I understand now. Stay away from us, Nathan. I mean it." She was gathering the children, preparing to leave, when Ethan stepped forward and did something that changed everything. The little boy walked right up to Nathan and took his hand with the innocent trust that children showed to people they instinctively recognized as safe. "You make Mommy sad," Ethan said, looking up at Nathan with eyes that were wise beyond their years. "But you make her happy too. I can tell." Nathan knelt down so he was at eye level with his son, and felt tears threatening to spill over. "I never meant to make your Mommy sad," he said softly. "I would never want to hurt her or you or your sisters." "Then why did you go away?" Ellie asked, joining her brother and taking Nathan's other hand. "Mommy said you had important work to do, but weren't we important too?" The innocent question cut deeper than any accusation could have. Nathan looked up at Isabella, who was watching the interaction with tears streaming down her face. She had told their children that his work was more important than they were, because that's what his mother had convinced her to believe. "You are the most important thing in the world," Nathan said to the triplets, his voice breaking slightly. "All of you and your mommy. I didn't know about you before, but now that I do, nothing else matters." "You didn't know about us?" Emma asked, tilting her head with curiosity. "But how could you not know? We're right here." Nathan's throat closed up completely. How do you explain to 4-year-olds that their grandmother had lied and manipulated their way out of their lives? How do you tell them that you spent 5 years not knowing they existed? Isabella must have seen his struggle, because she stepped forward and gently extracted the children from Nathan's hands. Girls, Ethan, we really need to go home now, she said firmly. Say goodbye. But as they walked toward the car, Emma broke away from her mother and ran back to Nathan. She pressed her drawing into his hands with the solemnity of a child making an important decision. Here, she said simply. Now you know what our family looks like. Maybe you can draw your face in the empty spot. Nathan accepted the drawing with trembling hands, looking down at the 5 stick figures, Isabella in the middle, 3 small children around her, and 1 tall figure with no facial features. His family. The family he had been denied for 4 years. Thank you, he whispered, kneeling down to Emma's level again. This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me. Emma beamed at him, then surprised him by throwing her small arms around his neck in a spontaneous hug. I'm glad you're not just in Mommy's sad pictures anymore, she whispered in his ear. Now you're real. Nathan hugged her back gently, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. When Emma pulled away and ran back to her family, Nathan felt like a piece of his heart went with her. Isabella was crying openly now, but she was still determined to leave. She buckled the children into their car seats with shaking hands, refusing to look at Nathan again. But just before she got into the driver's seat, she turned back to him. Don't follow us, she said, her voice barely controlled. Please, Nathan. We can't do this. Isabella, wait, Nathan called out, but she was already starting the car. As the Honda Civic pulled out of the parking lot, Nathan saw 3 small faces pressed against the back window, waving at him with the enthusiasm that only children possessed. He waved back, his heart breaking and soaring at the same time. He had met his children. He had held his daughter in his arms and looked into his son's eyes. They were real, they were beautiful, and they were his. But he had also seen the fear and pain in Isabella's eyes, the way she still flinched from him like he might hurt her again. Nathan looked down at Emma's drawing, studying every crayon stroke. In the corner, she had written her name in careful preschool letters, and underneath it, she had written "For Daddy," with a heart drawn next to it. This wasn't over. It couldn't be over. Nathan had found his family, and now he had to find a way to convince Isabella to give him the chance to be the father and partner he should have been all along. As other parents and children moved around him in the parking lot, Nathan stood alone, clutching his daughter's drawing and making a silent promise. He would earn their trust. He would prove that he had changed. And somehow he would bring his family home. 2 days passed before Nathan worked up the courage to approach Isabella again. He had spent those days learning everything he could about her daily routine, not to stalk her, but to find the right moment for a conversation that wouldn't traumatize their children. He also spent countless hours staring at Emma's drawing, which he had framed and placed on the nightstand in his hotel room. Nathan finally decided to approach Isabella at the hospital during her lunch break. It was neutral territory, somewhere she would feel safe but where they could talk privately. He waited in the hospital cafeteria, nursing a cup of coffee and trying to calm his racing heart. When Isabella walked in with her friend Sarah, Nathan felt the familiar jolt of recognition and longing. Isabella looked exhausted, her scrubs wrinkled from a long morning shift, but she was laughing at something Sarah had said. The sound made Nathan's chest ache with memories of better times. Isabella spotted him immediately, and the laughter died on her lips. She said something to Sarah, who looked over at Nathan with obvious curiosity and what might have been hostility. After a brief conversation, Sarah reluctantly left them alone. Isabella approached Nathan's table with the cautious movements of someone expecting an attack. She sat down across from him but didn't relax, her body language screaming that she was ready to flee at any moment. "How did you find me?" she asked without preamble. "Private investigator," Nathan admitted. "Isabella, I know you don't want to hear this, but I need you to know the truth about what happened 5 years ago." "I know what happened," Isabella said coldly. "Your mother made it very clear that I wasn't suitable for your family. That you needed someone who could help your career, not hold it back. Someone with better breeding, I think were her exact words." Nathan's hands clenched into fists on the table. "And what else did she tell you?" "That you agreed with her assessment," Isabella said, and Nathan could hear the old pain in her voice. "That you were relieved to have an easy way out of our relationship. That the money was your idea, a way to make me disappear quietly without any messy confrontations." "None of that was true," Nathan said urgently. "Isabella, I swear to you none of that was true. I didn't even know my mother had talked to you until it was too late. Isabella laughed bitterly. Right. You expect me to believe that Victoria Cross, one of the most powerful women in New York, made a decision that major without consulting her precious son. She didn't consult me because she knew I would have stopped her, Nathan said desperately. Isabella, I was going to propose to you. I had already bought the ring. I was planning to ask you to marry me that weekend. For the first time since sitting down, Isabella looked truly shaken. You're lying, she whispered. Nathan pulled out his phone and scrolled through his photos until he found what he was looking for, a picture of the engagement ring he had bought 5 years ago and never returned. It was a simple but elegant solitaire, exactly the style Isabella had admired when they walked past jewelry stores together. Isabella stared at the photo, her face cycling through disbelief, hope, and renewed pain. Even if that's true, she said finally, it doesn't change anything. Your mother was right about one thing: I wasn't good enough for your world. I proved that by taking her money and running away. You were protecting our children, Nathan said softly. You were pregnant, weren't you? When you left. Isabella's breath caught, and Nathan saw the answer in her eyes even before she nodded. I found out the morning after your mother and I talked. I was going to tell you that night, but after what she said, I couldn't. I couldn't trap you with an unwanted pregnancy. Unwanted. Nathan's voice cracked. Isabella, those children could never be unwanted. You could never be unwanted. I loved you more than my own life. Loved, Isabella repeated, emphasizing the past tense. That was 5 years ago, Nathan. We're different people now. Are we? Nathan asked quietly. Because I still love you. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day in 5 years. Isabella's composure finally cracked and tears spilled down her cheeks. Don't say that, she whispered. Please don't say that. Why not? It's the truth. Because it doesn't matter. Isabella's voice rose, causing a few other diners to look in their direction. She lowered her voice, but her intensity remained. Even if you think you still love me, even if you want to be a father to Emma, Ethan, and Ellie, your family will never accept us. Your mother will make our lives hell, and I won't put my children through that. My mother has no power over us, Nathan said firmly. I've cut all ties with her. She's no longer part of my life or my business. Isabella stared at him in shock. What do you mean? I mean that when I found out what she did to you, to us, I told her exactly what I thought of her actions. I've removed her from the board of directors, bought out her shares in the company, and made it clear that if she ever comes near you or our children, she'll face the full force of my legal team. You gave up your relationship with your mother for us? Isabella asked incredulously. I gave up my relationship with a woman who destroyed my family, Nathan corrected. She made her choice 5 years ago when she decided her social status was more important than my happiness. Now I'm making mine. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. The children ask about you, she finally said. Emma especially. She draws that same picture over and over, our family with your face missing. She asks why her daddy doesn't want to meet her. Nathan felt like someone had stabbed him in the chest. What do you tell her? I tell her that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and that her daddy doesn't know about her yet. But she's getting older, Nathan. She's starting to ask harder questions, and I don't know how much longer I can protect her from the truth. Then don't, Nathan said simply. Let me meet them properly. Let me be their father. It's not that simple, Isabella protested. They don't know you. You can't just walk into their lives and expect them to accept you as their daddy. I know it won't be easy, Nathan acknowledged. But Isabella, I've missed 4 years of their lives. I don't want to miss another day. Please, just give me a chance to prove that I'm not the man my mother tried to convince you I was. Isabella wiped her tears with a napkin, trying to compose herself. What exactly are you asking for? Time, Nathan said simply. Time to get to know them. Time to show you that I've changed, that I'm ready to put our family first. Time to earn their trust and hopefully to earn yours again too. And if it doesn't work out? If the children get attached to you and then you decide this life isn't what you want after all? That won't happen, Nathan said with absolute certainty. Isabella, I spent 5 years building an empire that means nothing without people to share it with. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but I give it all up in a heartbeat for the chance to be Emma's daddy, Ethan's daddy, Ellie's daddy. For the chance to be your partner again. Isabella studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or uncertainty. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her of his sincerity, because her rigid posture finally began to relax. If I agree to this, she said slowly, we do it my way. Slowly, carefully, with the children's well-being as the top priority. One wrong move, one sign that you're not ready for this responsibility, and you're out of their lives for good. I understand, Nathan said, hope blooming in his chest for the first time in years. And this doesn't mean we're getting back together, Isabella added quickly. This is about you getting to know your children. Nothing more. Nathan nodded, even though her words stung. He had hoped for more, but he understood that trust had to be rebuilt slowly. Whatever you're comfortable with. Isabella took a deep breath as if she was about to jump off a cliff. Okay, she said quietly. You can meet them. But we start small, maybe dinner at our house this weekend. And Nathan. Yes. Don't you dare break their hearts. They've been through enough. Nathan reached across the table and gently touched Isabella's hand. She didn't pull away, and that small gesture gave him more hope than any business deal he had ever closed. I promise, he said solemnly. I won't let them down. I won't let you down. Not again. As Isabella gathered her things to return to work, Nathan felt like he was seeing sunlight for the first time in 5 years. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, moments of doubt and fear. But he was going to meet his children properly, and maybe, just maybe, he would find a way to rebuild the family that should have been his all along. The game had changed once again, but this time, Nathan was determined to win the only prize that had ever truly mattered, the love of his family. Saturday afternoon found Nathan standing on the front porch of a small blue house with a white picket fence, holding a bouquet of wildflowers for Isabella and gifts for the children. His hands were shaking worse than they had during his first major business presentation, and he had changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He wanted to look approachable, not intimidating. The house was exactly what Nathan had expected, modest but well-maintained, with children's toys scattered across the small front yard and colorful chalk drawings decorating the sidewalk. There was a tire swing hanging from an old oak tree and flower boxes under the windows that had clearly been planted by someone who loved gardening but had limited time to tend to it. Before Nathan could knock, the front door burst open and Emma came racing out, her pigtails flying behind her. She threw herself at Nathan's legs with the fearless enthusiasm of a child who had already decided he was safe. You came, she announced, beaming up at him. I told Mommy you would come, but she said maybe you were too busy with important work. Nathan's heart clenched at the echo of the lies his mother had told Isabella. He knelt down to Emma's level, careful not to crush the flowers he was holding. There is nothing in the world more important than spending time with you and your brother and sister, he said seriously. Nothing. Emma studied his face with the intensity of a child trying to decide if an adult was telling the truth. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she grabbed his free hand and started tugging him toward the house. Come see my room, she demanded. I have new pictures to show you, and Ethan built a fort and Ellie taught herself to whistle, but it sounds like a snake. Nathan allowed himself to be dragged into the house, and immediately felt like he was stepping into a completely different world. The walls were covered with children's artwork, family photos, and inspirational quotes that Isabella had probably put up during difficult moments. The furniture was second-hand but comfortable, and every surface held evidence of a busy family life: school papers, hair ties, small toys and books. It was nothing like the sterile perfection of Nathan's penthouse, but it felt more like home than anywhere he had ever lived. Isabella appeared from the kitchen, wearing a yellow sundress that made her look younger and more relaxed than Nathan had seen her in years. She was barefoot, her hair loose around her shoulders, and there was a smudge of what looked like flour on her cheek. Nathan had never wanted to kiss someone more in his entire life. You're early, she said, but she was smiling slightly. I couldn't wait any longer, Nathan admitted, offering her the wildflowers. These are for you. Isabella accepted the bouquet with surprise, bringing them to her nose to inhale their sweet scent. They're beautiful. You remembered that I prefer wildflowers to roses. I remember everything about you, Nathan said softly, and Isabella's cheeks flushed pink. Before the moment could become too intense, Ethan and Ellie came thundering down the stairs. Ethan was carrying an enormous book about dinosaurs, while Ellie had what appeared to be a recorder or whistle clutched in her small fist. Are you really our daddy? Ethan asked with the directness that Nathan was learning was a family trait. Mommy said you might be, but she said we shouldn't get too excited because grown-ups are complicated. Nathan shot a look at Isabella, who shrugged apologetically. I thought honesty was better than confusion, she said. Nathan knelt down so he was at eye level with both children. Yes, he said simply. I am your daddy. I know that's probably confusing because I haven't been here before, but I'm here now, and I want to get to know you both very much. Why weren't you here before? Ellie asked, tilting her head curiously. Did you not want us? The question hit Nathan like a physical blow, but Isabella stepped in before he could struggle with an answer. Remember what we talked about, sweetheart? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes or don't know important things. Your daddy didn't know about you before, but now he does. And now you want to know us? Ethan asked Nathan seriously. More than anything, Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. I want to know everything about you. What's your favorite color? What makes you laugh? What do you want to be when you grow up? What makes you scared? I want to know all of it. Ellie immediately launched into a detailed explanation of her favorite things: purple, silly faces, veterinarian, and spiders, respectively, while Ethan opened his dinosaur book and began showing Nathan his favorite pictures. Emma had disappeared but returned moments later with a stack of her drawings, spreading them out on the coffee table like an art exhibition. Nathan found himself sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by his children as they showed him their treasures and told him their stories. It was overwhelming and wonderful and heartbreaking all at once. These amazing little people were his children, and he had missed so much of their lives. Daddy, do you like dinosaurs? Ethan asked, showing Nathan a picture of a particularly fierce-looking T-Rex. The word daddy coming from his son's mouth nearly made Nathan cry. I love dinosaurs, he said truthfully. Did you know that some dinosaurs were actually covered in feathers like birds? Ethan's eyes went wide with excitement, and he immediately started flipping through his book to find pictures of feathered dinosaurs. Emma scooted closer to Nathan, leaning against his side as she explained each of her drawings in detail. Ellie demonstrated her whistle, which did indeed sound somewhat like a snake. Isabella watched from the kitchen doorway, and Nathan could see the emotions playing across her face: hope, fear, longing, and something that might have been love. She was seeing what they could have been, what they might still become, but Nathan could tell she was afraid to trust it. Dinner's ready, Isabella announced after about an hour of show and tell. The meal was simple spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread, but it was the best food Nathan had ever tasted. The children chattered constantly, telling him about school, their friends, their dreams, and their fears. Nathan listened to every word, filing away details about his children's personalities and preferences. Emma was the artist and the peacemaker, always trying to make sure everyone was happy. Ethan was the protector and the thinker, asking deep questions and watching out for his sisters. Ellie was the explorer and the entertainer, fearless and funny and full of energy. Do you have a house? Emma asked as they were finishing dinner. I do, Nathan said. But it's not as nice as this one. Why not? Ellie asked. Don't you have pictures on your walls? Nathan thought about his sterile penthouse with its expensive art and designer furniture. No, he said honestly. I don't have any pictures on my walls. That's sad, Emma said with the sympathy that only children possessed. Houses need pictures to make them happy. You can have one of mine if you want. I would love that, Nathan said, meaning it completely. After dinner, Isabella suggested they go outside so the children could show Nathan their backyard. It was small but had been transformed into a magical space for kids: a sandbox, a small swing set, a garden where the triplets had planted flowers and vegetables, and the promised fort that Ethan had constructed out of cardboard boxes and blankets. Nathan found himself being dragged from activity to activity, pushed on swings, shown how to properly build a sandcastle, and inducted into an elaborate imaginative game that seemed to involve dragons, princesses, and dinosaurs all living together in harmony. As the sun began to set, the children's energy finally started to flag. Isabella suggested it was time for Nathan to go, but Emma immediately protested. Can't Daddy stay for bedtime stories? She asked plaintively. We always read 3 stories, one for each of us. Daddy could read one. Nathan looked at Isabella hopefully, not wanting to overstep but desperate for more time with his children. Isabella hesitated, then nodded slowly. 1 story, she said. Then Daddy has to go home and you 3 need to get ready for bed. The bedtime routine was chaos and wonder all mixed together. Nathan helped with baths, brushed teeth, and listened to prayers that included thanks for new daddies and requests for more time together. When it came time for stories, Emma chose a book about a little girl who painted the world in rainbow colors, and Nathan read it with all the dramatic flair he could muster. By the time the story was over, Ellie had fallen asleep curled against Nathan's side, and Ethan was fighting heavy eyelids. Only Emma was still fully awake, studying Nathan's face in the dim light of her bedroom lamp. Are you going to come back? She asked quietly. If your mommy says it's okay, yes, Nathan promised. I would like to come back very much. Good, Emma said, snuggling deeper into her pillow. I like having a daddy. Nathan's throat closed up completely. He kissed Emma's forehead gently, then carefully extracted himself from Ellie's sleepy grip and followed Isabella downstairs. They stood in the living room, suddenly awkward now that the children weren't there to provide distraction. Nathan wanted to pull Isabella into his arms, to tell her how much this evening had meant to him, how perfect their family felt together. But he could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the way she was holding herself apart from him. "Thank you," he said finally, "for tonight, for giving me this chance. It was the best evening I've had in 5 years." "They like you," Isabella admitted. "More than I expected them to." "And what about you?" Nathan asked quietly. "Do you think there's any chance?" "Nathan, don't," Isabella said, but her voice was gentle rather than harsh. "This is about the children. Let's just focus on that for now." Nathan nodded, understanding but hoping. "Can I see them again? Maybe next weekend?" Isabella was quiet for a moment, considering. "They have a soccer game on Saturday morning," she said finally. "If you want to come watch." "I'll be there," Nathan said immediately. "What time?" As Isabella walked him to the door, Nathan felt like he was leaving a piece of his heart behind. The house felt like home in a way his penthouse never had. The children felt like the family he had always dreamed of but never dared to hope for. And Isabella? Isabella still felt like the love of his life. "Isabella," he said as she opened the front door. "Yes. I meant what I said earlier. About still loving you. That hasn't changed and it never will." Isabella's breath caught, and for a moment Nathan thought she might say something that would give him hope. But then she stepped back, creating distance between them. "Good night, Nathan," she said softly. As Nathan drove back to his hotel, he couldn't stop smiling. It had been one evening, just a few hours, but it had changed everything. He was a father. He had 3 amazing children who had already carved out a place for themselves in his heart. And maybe, just maybe, there was hope for a future with the woman he had never stopped loving. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in 5 years, Nathan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Nathan's newfound happiness lasted exactly 6 days. He had spent the week floating on cloud 9, replaying every moment of his evening with Isabella and the children, counting down the hours until he could see them again at Emma's soccer game. He had even started looking at real estate listings in Portland, imagining a future where he could be close to his family. That dream came crashing down when his assistant called on Friday morning with news that made Nathan's blood run cold. "Sir," Rebecca's voice was tense with concern. "Your mother is here. She's demanding to see you and she's not taking no for an answer." Nathan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of dread settle in his chest. "Send her in," he said grimly. "And Rebecca? Hold all my calls. This might take a while." Victoria Cross swept into Nathan's hotel suite like a queen entering her throne room, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor with military precision. At 62, she was still a formidable woman, perfectly groomed, expensively dressed, and radiating the kind of cold authority that had made her one of the most feared businesswomen in New York. "Nathan," she said, her voice carrying the slight chill that meant she was displeased. "Imagine my surprise when I discovered that my son had abandoned his empire to chase after some nurse and her bastard children in Oregon." "Don't you dare call them that," Nathan said, his voice deadly quiet. "Those children are your grandchildren, and if you ever speak about them that way again you'll regret it." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched slightly. "So it's true. The Martinez woman did trap you with a pregnancy. I should have known she would try something so predictable." "She didn't trap me with anything," Nathan snapped, rising from his chair to tower over his mother. "She never even told me she was pregnant because of the lies you fed her about what I wanted." "I told her the truth," Victoria said coldly. "That a relationship with her would ruin your future. That you needed someone appropriate for your position in society. Someone who could be an asset, not a liability. You told her that I agreed with your assessment. You made her believe that I wanted her gone." Victoria shrugged, completely unrepentant. "If that's what it took to protect your future, then yes. And it worked, didn't it? Look at what you've accomplished in the 5 years since she left. Your company has tripled in size, your net worth has grown exponentially, and you've become one of the most influential men in the world. None of that matters without a family to share it with," Nathan said desperately. "Mother, I loved her. I still love her. And those children, they're amazing, brilliant, perfect little people who are my flesh and blood." "They're distractions," Victoria said dismissively. "Just like their mother. Nathan, you're 32 years old. You're in your prime, both personally and professionally. Do you really want to tie yourself down to a woman with no social standing and 3 children who will require constant attention and resources? Yes, Nathan said without hesitation. I want exactly that. I want to marry Isabella if she'll have me. I want to raise our children together. I want to be a family. Victoria's composure slipped slightly, revealing the steel beneath her polished exterior. Then you're a fool. But you're my fool, and I won't let you destroy everything we've built together over some misguided romantic fantasy. What are you talking about? Nathan asked, though he was afraid he already knew. Victoria opened her Hermes purse and pulled out a folder, placing it on Nathan's desk with a satisfied smile. Isabella Martinez, or Isabella Santos as she calls herself now, has been living quite comfortably on the money I gave her 5 years ago. She's also been supplementing her income in ways that I'm sure you'll find interesting. Nathan snatched up the folder, his heart pounding with dread. Inside were bank statements, financial records, and what appeared to be surveillance photos of Isabella. His mother had been having her watched, investigating her like a criminal. She's been accepting money from a charitable foundation for single mothers, Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Money that she obtained by claiming the children's father abandoned them. She's been playing the victim, Nathan, collecting sympathy and financial assistance while living off the generous settlement I provided. She's raising 3 children on a nurse's salary, Nathan said through gritted teeth. Of course she needed help. There's nothing wrong with accepting assistance when you're struggling. There's everything wrong with lying to get it, Victoria countered. She told the foundation that she had no way to contact the children's father, that he had no interest in being part of their lives. Meanwhile, she's been sitting on information that could have connected you to your children years ago. Nathan stared at the papers, feeling sick to his stomach. Some of what his mother was saying might technically be true, but she was twisting the facts to make Isabella look manipulative and greedy. She believed you, Nathan said finally. She believed that I didn't want them, so she did what she had to do to survive. That doesn't make her a villain. Doesn't it? Victoria asked smoothly. Nathan, think about this rationally. If she truly loved you, why didn't she try to contact you when she found out she was pregnant? Why didn't she give you the chance to step up and be a father? Instead, she took my money and disappeared, then spent 5 years collecting additional funds while keeping your children away from you. Nathan felt the familiar doubt creeping in, the way his mother had always been able to plant seeds of uncertainty in his mind. But then he thought about Isabella's face when she talked about the children, the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she had sacrificed everything to give them a good life. You're wrong, he said firmly. Isabella is a good mother and a good person. She did what she thought was best for our children. Our children? Victoria laughed coldly. Nathan, you met them once. You had dinner at their little house and read them a bedtime story. That doesn't make you a father. That makes you a stranger who shares their DNA. I am their father, Nathan said, his voice rising. And I'm going to be part of their lives whether you approve or not. Victoria's expression hardened into something truly frightening. I don't think you understand the situation, Nathan. Your trust fund, your position in the company, your inheritance, all of it depends on your adherence to certain standards. If you insist on pursuing this destructive path, I'll have no choice but to protect the family legacy by removing you from it entirely. You would disown me? Nathan asked incredulously. I would do whatever is necessary to prevent you from destroying everything your father and I built, Victoria said without a trace of emotion. Cut ties with the Martinez woman and her children, Nathan. Come home, marry someone appropriate, and produce legitimate heirs for the Cross Empire. Or lose everything and try to build a life on a nurse's salary in Portland. Nathan stared at his mother, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in his life. She wasn't just cold or controlling, she was genuinely heartless, willing to destroy his happiness to maintain her vision of what the Cross family should be. Get out, he said quietly. Nathan. Get out. Nathan roared, pointing toward the door. Get out of my sight before I do something we'll both regret. Victoria gathered her purse and the folder with the dignity of someone who had gotten exactly the reaction she wanted. You have 48 hours to think about this, Nathan. After that, I'll assume you've made your choice and I'll act accordingly. She paused at the door, looking back at him with something that might have been genuine sadness. I hope you come to your senses, son. I really do. Because once I start the process of removing you from the company and the trust, there won't be any going back. After she left, Nathan sank into his chair, his head in his hands. His mother's threats weren't idle, she had the legal authority to carry them out. Victoria Cross was a woman who always kept her promises, whether they were rewards or punishments. Nathan could choose his family and lose everything else, or he could choose his empire and lose the only thing that truly mattered to him. It should have been an easy decision, but the weight of potentially dragging Isabella and the children into poverty made it more complicated than he wanted to admit. His phone buzzed with a text message from Isabella. "The kids are excited about the game tomorrow. Emma made you a good luck charm." Nathan stared at the message, his heart breaking and soaring at the same time. Emma had made him something. His 4-year-old daughter, who barely knew him, had thought about him enough to create a good luck charm for their next meeting. Nathan made his decision in that moment. His mother could take his money, his company, his inheritance, she could take everything. But she couldn't take his family. Not again. He had 48 hours to figure out how to protect Isabella and the children from the storm that was coming. 48 hours to prepare for a battle that would determine the rest of their lives. Nathan had fought for his empire once. Now it was time to fight for something far more important: his family's future and the woman he loved. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect weather for a children's soccer game. Nathan arrived at the small community field 30 minutes early, his stomach churning with anxiety about his mother's ultimatum and his determination to protect his family at all costs. He had made his decision during a sleepless night, but he hadn't yet figured out how to tell Isabella that their future together might mean financial struggle instead of security. The field was already buzzing with activity as parents set up folding chairs and children ran around in colorful uniforms. Nathan spotted Isabella immediately. She was kneeling beside Emma, helping her tie her cleats, while Ethan and Ellie played on the nearby playground equipment. The sight of his family together made Nathan's chest tighten with love and protective, fierce determination. Emma saw him first and came running across the field, her soccer uniform slightly too big and her hair in pigtails that bounced with each step. She launched herself into Nathan's arms with the complete trust that never failed to amaze him. "Daddy? You came?" she squealed, hugging him tightly. "I made you something." She pulled a braided friendship bracelet out of her pocket, made with purple and green yarn that had clearly been chosen with great care. "It's for good luck," she explained seriously as she tied it around Nathan's wrist. "Purple is my favorite color, and green is like your eyes and mine." Nathan felt tears threatening as he looked down at the simple bracelet. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever made for me," he said honestly. "I'll wear it always." Ethan and Ellie came running over, and soon Nathan was surrounded by his children, all talking at once about the game, their positions on the team, and their hopes of winning. Their excitement was infectious, and for a moment, Nathan forgot about his mother's threats and lost himself in the pure joy of being their father. Isabella approached more slowly, carrying a folding chair and a small cooler. She was wearing jeans and a Team Parent t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she looked like she belonged here in a way that made Nathan's heart ache. This was the life she had built without him: community involvement, friendships with other parents, the kind of normal family experiences he had never had growing up. "Good morning," she said, her smile warm but cautious. "Ready for your first soccer game experience?" "More than ready," Nathan said, meaning it. "Though I should warn you, I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to cheering for 4-year-olds. Just cheer loudly and tell them they're amazing no matter what happens," Isabella laughed. "That's pretty much the extent of it at this age." They found spots on the sideline, and Nathan helped Isabella set up their chairs. The normalcy of it, sitting with the other parents, watching their children warm up, making small talk about the weather and the game schedule, was something Nathan had never experienced but found surprisingly comforting. "So you're Emma's dad," said a woman sitting nearby, introducing herself as Jennifer, the mother of one of Emma's teammates. "Isabella has mentioned you a few times. It's nice that you could make it." Nathan shot a questioning look at Isabella, wondering what exactly she had told the other parents about him. Isabella's cheeks flushed slightly. "I told them you travel a lot for work," she said quietly. "That you've been trying to be more involved lately." It was a kind way of explaining his absence without going into the painful details, and Nathan felt a surge of gratitude for Isabella's discretion. She could have told these people the truth that he hadn't known about his children's existence, but instead she had protected his reputation and their children's privacy. The game started, and Nathan found himself completely absorbed in watching Emma run around the field with enthusiastic, if not particularly skilled, determination. She wasn't the most coordinated player on the team, but she had more heart than anyone else, cheering for her teammates and offering encouragement even when they were losing. "She gets that from you," Nathan said to Isabella during halftime. "The way she cares about everyone else." "She gets her stubborn streak from you though," Isabella replied with a smile. "Watch her face when the coach suggests she play defense instead of forward." Sure enough, Emma's expression when reassigned to a position away from the goal was pure cross-family determination. She clearly wanted to score goals, not prevent them, but she accepted the coach's decision with grace that made Nathan's chest swell with pride. "She's incredible," he murmured, not just about Emma but about all of them. Ethan was cheering from the playground where he was entertaining Ellie, showing the same protective instincts Nathan recognized in himself. Ellie was making friends with every child and parent within a 10-foot radius, her social butterfly nature drawing people to her like a magnet. "They all are," Isabella agreed softly. "They're the best thing I've ever done." Nathan was about to respond when his phone buzzed with a text message. His blood ran cold when he saw it was from his mother. "Time's up, Nathan. I've called an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. Choose wisely." Isabella must have noticed his change in expression because she leaned closer, concern written across her face. "What's wrong?" Nathan hesitated, not wanting to burden her with his family drama, but knowing she deserved to know what they might be facing. "My mother," he said simply. "What about her?" Nathan looked around at the other parents, making sure they couldn't be overheard. "She found out about you and the children. She's not pleased." Isabella's face went pale. "What does that mean?" "It means she's threatening to cut me off financially if I don't walk away from you and the kids," Nathan said, hating how the words sounded even as he knew Isabella needed to hear them. "She's calling a board meeting to remove me from the company." Isabella stared at him for a long moment, processing this information. "How much would you lose?" "Everything," Nathan admitted. "The company, my trust fund, my inheritance. She has the legal authority to do it." "Nathan." Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. "You can't lose everything because of us. That's not fair to you." "It's not about fair," Nathan said firmly. "Isabella, I don't care about the money. I care about you and Emma and Ethan and Ellie. That's all that matters to me." "But you've worked your whole life to build that company," Isabella protested. "You can't just throw it all away." "I'm not throwing it away," Nathan said, reaching for her hand. "I'm choosing what's most important. I spent 5 years being miserable and successful and I never want to go back to that." Isabella pulled her hand away, and Nathan could see the walls going back up around her heart. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said. "Your family will never accept us, Nathan. Your mother proved that 5 years ago and she's proving it again now. So what?" Nathan asked desperately. "Isabella, we can build our own life together. I have enough money saved to ensure you and the children are comfortable. We don't need my mother's approval or her fortune." "What happens when you resent us for costing you your empire?" Isabella asked, her voice thick with unshed tears. "What happens when you look at us and remember everything you gave up?" "That will never happen," Nathan said with absolute certainty. "Isabella, you and our children are not something I'm giving up other things for. You are the thing I want. You're the life I choose." Before Isabella could respond, Emma came running over, her face flushed with excitement and exertion. "Did you see me play defense, Daddy? I stopped 3 goals." "You were amazing," Nathan said, scooping her up for a hug. "I'm so proud of you. Are you coming to our house for lunch?" Emma asked hopefully. "Mommy said she would make grilled cheese if you wanted to stay." Nathan looked at Isabella, silently asking for permission. He could see the conflict in her eyes, her desire to include him warring with her fear of the complications his presence brought to their lives. "Please, Mommy?" Ethan added, appearing at Nathan's side with grass stains on his knees from playing. "Can Daddy come for lunch? And for dessert?" Ellie chimed in, having abandoned the playground in favor of family negotiations. "We have ice cream." Isabella looked at her children's hopeful faces and Nathan's pleading expression, and Nathan could see her resolve weakening. "Okay," she said finally. "But just for lunch." As they packed up their chairs and headed for the parking lot, Nathan felt his phone buzz again. Another message from his mother. "I know where she lives, Nathan. If you won't walk away voluntarily, perhaps she needs to understand the full consequences of her selfishness." Nathan stopped dead in his tracks, his blood turning to ice. His mother wasn't just threatening him anymore, she was threatening Isabella and the children. Victoria Cross didn't make idle threats, and Nathan knew she was capable of making their lives very difficult if she chose to. "Nathan." Isabella had noticed he'd stopped walking. "What is it now?" Nathan looked at her, at their children chattering excitedly about lunch and the afternoon they would spend together, and made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't just going to choose his family over his empire, he was going to fight for them. His mother wanted a war? She would get one. But first he had lunch to eat and a family to protect. The battle with Victoria Cross could wait until after he'd had grilled cheese with his children and maybe, just maybe, convinced Isabella that love was worth fighting for. "Nothing that can't wait," Nathan said, forcing a smile. Let's go home. As they walked toward their cars, Nathan silently vowed that this would not be another stolen moment with his family. This time he would find a way to win the war without losing the people who mattered most. His mother had underestimated him once before. She wouldn't do it again. The emergency board meeting Victoria had called for Monday morning never happened, because Nathan struck first. At 6 a.m. that day he was sitting in his lawyer's office in New York, having flown back from Portland late Sunday night after one of the most perfect family days of his life. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Nathan?" his attorney, David Richardson, asked as he reviewed the documents Nathan had requested. "Once we file these papers, there's no going back." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Nathan replied. "My mother wants to play hardball? Fine. But she's forgotten that I learned everything I know about business from her." What Victoria didn't know was that over the past 2 years, Nathan had been quietly buying up shares in Cross Enterprises through shell companies and private investors. He now owned 43% of the company to his mother's 37%, with the remaining 20% held by various board members and small investors. Nathan had also discovered something interesting in the company's founding documents, a clause that allowed for the removal of board members, including the chairwoman, if they were deemed to be acting against the company's best interests. His mother had helped write that clause years ago to protect against hostile takeovers. She never imagined it would be used against her. "The board meeting is set for 2 p.m., Richardson said, organizing the papers. "I've already contacted the other board members. Most of them are more loyal to you than to your mother anyway. You've been running the day-to-day operations for years." Nathan nodded, his mind already racing ahead to the confrontation that was coming. He felt calmer than he had in weeks, centered by the knowledge that he was fighting for the right reasons. Yesterday's lunch with Isabella and the children had only strengthened his resolve. After the soccer game they had gone back to the little blue house, and Nathan had experienced his first real taste of domestic life. He had helped make grilled cheese sandwiches, refereed a game of hide and seek that involved all 3 children, and somehow ended up with Nathan hiding behind a couch that was too small to conceal him. He had pushed children on swings, helped with a puzzle, and read stories until his voice was hoarse. Most importantly, he had watched Isabella relax around him for the first time since he'd found her again. She had laughed at his attempts to braid Ellie's hair, teased him about his complete inability to understand the rules of the complicated board game Ethan had invented, and smiled when she caught him teaching Emma how to draw dinosaurs. "You're good with them," she had said quietly while the children were occupied with a movie after dinner. "I love them," Nathan had replied simply. "All of them." Isabella had looked at him for a long moment, and Nathan had seen something shift in her expression, a softening, a recognition of his sincerity. She hadn't said anything more, but when the children begged him to stay for the movie, she hadn't objected. Nathan had spent the evening on the couch with Emma curled up on one side of him and Ellie on the other, while Ethan leaned against Isabella's chair, occasionally looking over to make sure Nathan was still there. It had felt like the most natural thing in the world, like this was exactly where he belonged. When the movie ended and it was time for Nathan to leave, Emma had hugged him tightly and whispered, "I wish you could stay forever, Daddy." "Maybe someday," Nathan had whispered back, meaning it with every fiber of his being. Now, sitting in his lawyer's office, Nathan was taking the first step toward making that someday a reality. He couldn't build a future with Isabella and their children while his mother held the threat of financial ruin over their heads. It was time to remove that threat permanently. The board meeting was held in the conference room of Cross Enterprises' Manhattan headquarters, in the building Nathan had helped design and the company he had spent his adult life growing. As he walked into the room, Nathan felt a moment of sadness for what this confrontation would cost him, regardless of who won. Victoria was already seated at the head of the conference table, dressed in her signature black suit and wearing the expression of cold determination Nathan knew so well. The other 7 board members were present, their faces carefully neutral as they waited to see how this family drama would unfold. "Nathan," Victoria said as he took his seat, "I'm glad you decided to come. I was beginning to think you'd chosen to hide in Oregon rather than face the consequences of your poor judgment." "I'm not hiding from anything, Mother," Nathan replied calmly. "In fact, I called this meeting to address some issues that have come to my attention regarding the leadership of this company." Victoria's eyebrow arched slightly. "I called this meeting, Nathan. The purpose is to discuss your recent abandonment of your responsibilities and to determine whether you're fit to continue in your current role." "Actually," David Richardson interjected, rising from his seat beside Nathan, "Mr. Cross called this meeting in his capacity as majority shareholder of Cross Enterprises. The agenda has been formally filed and distributed." Nathan watched his mother's face as the implications sank in. Victoria Cross was many things, but she wasn't stupid. She understood immediately that the balance of power had shifted in a way she hadn't anticipated. "That's impossible," she said, but Nathan could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Over the past 2 years, I've acquired an additional 6% stake in the company through various private purchases," Nathan explained matter-of-factly. "Combined with my existing holdings, I now control 43% of Cross Enterprises. I believe that makes me the majority shareholder." Victoria's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. "You've been working against me?" "I've been protecting my interests," Nathan corrected. "Something you taught me to do." Richardson distributed packets to each board member. "The first order of business is a motion of no confidence in Victoria Cross as chairwoman of the board, based on her recent attempts to use her position for personal vendettas rather than the company's best interests." Nathan watched as the board members reviewed the evidence he had compiled: documentation of his mother's threats to remove him from the company for personal reasons, her interference in his private life, and her plans to disrupt the company's operations to satisfy her own agenda. "This is ridiculous," Victoria said, but Nathan could see the panic beginning to show in her eyes. "I've given my life to this company. Everything I've done has been for the good of Cross Enterprises. Including threatening to destroy the company's leadership structure because you disapprove of my personal relationships?" Nathan asked quietly. "The board has a right to know that you've been using your position to manipulate my private life, Mother. They have a right to know that you're willing to damage the company to maintain control over me." The vote, when it came, was swift and decisive. 6 of the 7 board members voted to remove Victoria as chairwoman and install Nathan in her place. Only Victoria's oldest ally, a man who had been friends with Nathan's father, abstained. Victoria sat in stunned silence as the implications of her defeat sank in. She was still a board member, still a significant shareholder, but she no longer had the power to control Nathan's life or threaten his family. "You'll regret this," she said finally, her voice cold with fury. "You think that little nurse and her children will make you happy? You think love is enough to build a life on? You'll learn, Nathan. You'll learn that I was right about everything." "Maybe I will," Nathan said sadly. "But that's my choice to make, not yours. I'm 32 years old, Mother. It's time you let me live my own life." As the board members filed out of the conference room, Nathan remained seated, staring out the window at the city skyline he had loved for so long. He had won the battle, secured his company and his financial independence, but the victory felt hollow without his family to share it with. Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed Isabella's number, his heart racing as he waited for her to answer. "Hello." Her voice sounded cautious, probably because he was calling during work hours. "Isabella, it's Nathan. Are you free to talk for a minute? I'm on my break. Is everything okay? You sound strange." Nathan took a deep breath. "I just removed my mother as chairwoman of Cross Enterprises. She no longer has any power to threaten us or make our lives difficult." There was a long pause. "Nathan, what does that mean?" "It means I'm free," Nathan said simply. "Free to choose my own life, my own family, my own future. And I choose you. I choose Emma and Ethan and Ellie. If you'll have me." Another pause, longer this time. "Nathan." "I know you need time," Nathan said quickly. "I know I have to earn your trust, prove that I'm ready to be the father our children deserve and the partner you need. But Isabella, I love you. I've loved you for 7 years, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much you and our children mean to me." "Where are you right now?" Isabella asked softly. "New York. But I'm coming home to Portland tonight. If that's okay with you." "The children miss you," Isabella admitted. "Emma asked this morning if you were coming to dinner again soon." Nathan felt hope bloom in his chest. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I would call you and ask." "Consider this my answer," Nathan said, smiling for the first time all day. "I'll be there." As Nathan ended the call and began making arrangements to return to Portland, he felt like he was finally taking the first step toward the life he was meant to live. He had his company, his independence, and most importantly, he had hope for a future with the family he loved. The battle with his mother was over, but the real work was just beginning. Now Nathan had to prove to Isabella and their children that he was worthy of their love and trust. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in 5 years, Nathan felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 6 months later, Nathan stood in the backyard of the house he had bought 3 blocks away from Isabella's rental, watching his children play in the snow that had fallen overnight. It was Christmas morning, and the sight of Emma, Ethan, and Ellie building a snowman together filled his heart with the kind of joy he had never imagined possible. The house purchase had been Isabella's idea, actually. After 2 months of Nathan staying in hotels whenever he visited Portland, she had suggested that if he was serious about being part of their lives long-term, he should establish a real home base in the city. The house he had chosen was modest by his standards but perfect for their needs, close enough for daily visits but separate enough to respect Isabella's need for independence. Those 6 months had been the most challenging and rewarding of Nathan's life. Learning to be a father to 3-4-year-olds was like learning to speak a completely new language while riding a roller coaster. There were tantrums and tears, bedtime negotiations and breakfast catastrophes, and moments when Nathan wondered if he was completely out of his depth. But there were also soccer games and art projects, bedtime stories and lazy Sunday mornings, dance parties in the living room and family movie nights. Nathan had learned that Ethan was afraid of thunderstorms but loved helping with cooking. Emma was fiercely independent but needed extra cuddles when she was tired. Ellie was brave about everything except getting her hair washed, which required elaborate negotiations and sometimes bribery. Most importantly, Nathan had learned that being a father wasn't about being perfect, it was about showing up, paying attention, and loving unconditionally. The children had accepted him into their lives with the remarkable resilience that only children possessed, and now they called him Daddy as naturally as breathing. Isabella had been slower to trust, more cautious about letting Nathan back into her heart. There had been dinner dates that felt more like job interviews, conversations where Nathan felt like he was being tested for his commitment and sincerity. Isabella had made it clear that she wouldn't risk her children's hearts being broken again, and Nathan had respected her need to protect them. But gradually, slowly, the walls had come down. Nathan proved his dedication by showing up for every soccer game, every school play, every doctor's appointment. He proved his love by learning to braid hair and pack lunches and navigate the complex social dynamics of preschool friendships. He proved his commitment by moving his entire life to Portland and building a routine around their family's needs. The turning point had come 3 months ago, during one of Oregon's famous rainstorms. Ethan had woken up terrified by the thunder, and Isabella had called Nathan without thinking. When he arrived soaking wet at 2 a.m. to comfort his frightened son, Isabella had looked at him like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. "You came," she had said as if she couldn't quite believe it. "Of course I came," Nathan had replied, gathering Ethan into his arms. "He needed me." That night, after Ethan had fallen back asleep, Nathan and Isabella had talked until dawn about their fears, their hopes, and their dreams for the future. Isabella had finally admitted that she still loved him, had never stopped loving him, but was terrified of the kind of pain she had experienced 5 years ago. Nathan had taken her hands in his and made her a promise: "I will never leave you again. Not for my mother, not for my company, not for anything. You and our children are my life now, Isabella. Everything else is just details." They had been officially together since that night, taking things slowly but steadily, building toward the future they both wanted. Nathan had met Isabella's friends and colleagues, had become a regular fixture at school events and neighborhood gatherings. He had learned to navigate the challenges of co-parenting and step-parenting, had figured out how to discipline with love and support without overstepping Isabella's authority. Now, standing in his snowy backyard on Christmas morning, Nathan felt like his life had finally clicked into place. The children were spending Christmas Eve and Christmas morning with him, while Isabella finished her shift at the hospital. She would join them for Christmas dinner, which Nathan was attempting to cook despite his limited culinary skills. "Daddy, look," Emma called out, pointing to their completed snowman. "We made him look like you." Nathan laughed when he saw that they had somehow managed to give the snowman his dark hair using fallen leaves and had stuck 2 green buttons where the eyes should be. It was ridiculous and perfect and exactly the kind of thing his children would think to do. "He's very handsome," Nathan said seriously, earning giggles from all 3 kids. "Can we build a snow mama too?" Ellie asked hopefully. "So the snow daddy won't be lonely?" "That's a wonderful idea," Nathan agreed, his heart swelling at the innocent way his children had included Isabella in their snow family. They were in the middle of constructing the snow mama when Nathan heard a car door slam in his driveway. Isabella appeared around the side of the house moments later, still wearing her scrubs but with a smile on her face that lit up the entire snowy landscape. "Mommy," the children chorused, abandoning the snowman to launch themselves at Isabella. Nathan watched as she hugged each child, listening to their excited chatter about the snow and their morning adventures. She looked tired but happy, and when she looked at Nathan over the children's heads, her smile was full of the love and contentment he had dreamed of for so long. "How was your shift?" Nathan asked, pulling her into his arms for a kiss that tasted like winter air and coming home. "Long," Isabella admitted, snuggling into his embrace. But worth it. We had 3 kids come into the ER with minor injuries from sledding accidents, and I got to tell their parents that everyone was going to be fine. Best Christmas present ever. I have something that might compete, Nathan said quietly, his heart suddenly racing with nervous anticipation. Oh really? Isabella asked, raising an eyebrow. Better than healthy children and happy parents? Nathan stepped back and reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small velvet box that he had been carrying around for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Isabella's breath caught as she realized what it was, and the children immediately crowded around them with curious excitement. Isabella Martinez, Nathan said, dropping to one knee in the snow while their children watched with wide eyes. 5 years ago, I lost the most important thing in my life because I was too young and too foolish to fight for what mattered. I won't make that mistake again. Isabella's hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her cheeks. You are the love of my life, Nathan continued, his voice thick with emotion. You are the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman I have ever known. You have given me the 3 most amazing children in the world, and you have taught me what it means to be part of a real family. Nathan, Isabella whispered, but he wasn't finished. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life, Nathan said, opening the box to reveal the same ring he had bought 5 years ago, the one he had never been able to return because it would always belong to her. I want to raise our children together and maybe add to our family someday if you want to. I want to grow old with you and watch our grandchildren play in this same backyard. Is Daddy asking Mommy to marry him? Emma asked in a loud whisper that made everyone laugh despite the tears. Yes, sweetheart, Nathan said, never taking his eyes off Isabella's face. Isabella, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving how much I love you and our beautiful family? Isabella was crying too hard to speak, but she nodded vigorously as she held out her trembling hand. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then Isabella was in his arms, kissing him with all the love and joy and hope they had both been carrying for so long. Yes, she finally managed to say between kisses. Yes, yes, yes. I love you so much, Nathan. I want to marry you. The children erupted in cheers and began dancing around them in the snow, chanting Mommy and Daddy are getting married, with a pure delight that only children could express. Does this mean we get to be in the wedding? Ethan asked practically. Does this mean you're going to live in our house now? Ellie added. Does this mean we're going to be a real family? Emma asked, her voice full of wonder. Nathan looked at Isabella, then at their 3 beautiful children, then at the house they would share and the life they would build together. We already are a real family, he said softly. We have been since the moment I met you all. The wedding will just make it official. As they stood in the snowy backyard, surrounded by the evidence of their children's joy and wrapped in each other's arms, Nathan felt a peace he had never experienced before. He had his family, his love, his future. Everything else, the money, the success, the empire he had built, was just icing on the cake. I love you, Isabella whispered against his lips. I love you too, Nathan replied. Forever and always. And as their children continued to dance around them in the snow, Nathan knew that this time, forever was exactly what they would have.